Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. In this video, we're going to go over 5 mistakes that you don't want to make when fishing for catfish this winter. You know folks, for some of us, we are lucky that we live in a part of the country where we are able to fish for catfish all winter long. And wintertime can be a rewarding time because you can put some big fish in the boat and up on the bank. Now the obvious downside to winter is, well, it's cold. And along with cold can come some bad weather, snow, ice, cold rain. Add to that dropping water temperatures, and it can be difficult to go out there and find and catch catfish in the winter. Now what I'm going to do in this video, folks, is go over 5 things that you're not going to want to do. I've done videos before on what you want to do. These are going to be some things to avoid doing so that you can maximize your time out there in the winter fishing and also make it, well, a maybe more pleasurable experience. Now, number 1 is kind of an obvious one. When it's wintertime, generally speaking, it's cold. The one mistake so many people make is they are underdressed, unprepared for the cold weather. And I know that sounds obvious, but sometimes we go out there and we're just not expecting it to be as cold as it is. If you're not outside a lot, you don't realize what it means to be cold soaked. And what that means is that when you first get out there and you're dressed and you come out of a nice warm car, you're kind of good to go. But after a couple of hours out there on the riverbank fishing, or maybe a cold boat ride down the lake, it will suck every little bit of heat out of you if you are not dressed and prepared for the cold. Picking your clothing is the single biggest thing you can do to make that outside fishing experience a little more tolerable in cold weather. You got to have a good base layer, top and bottom. Don't skimp on spending money on this item. Insulated underwear, whatever you want to call it, that is the jump start that you've got on staying warm. Now on top of that really warm base layer, put on something. Don't waste any of the insulation power there on the next level. If you're putting on a pair of pants, don't just put on a pair of blue jeans, put on a pair of fleece lined jeans. Something to add a little more insulation. Same thing up top. On top of that, I usually add some type of wind protection because wind is the thing that really zaps the heat out of you. I always tell people I can go out and stand it on a cold day. I can stand it on a windy day. I can stand it on a rainy day. But you put any of those 2 elements together and it's going to be miserable, especially in the wintertime. If you're out there and it's cold and you add wind to it, it's a bad experience. That outer windbreak layer is very important. Anytime you watch my winter fishing videos, you'll always see me with either the Frog Togs pilot suit on that I have. It's a bibs and jacket. Or you can go with some of the more expensive ones like the Cabela's Guidewear or the Bass Pro Shop 100-mile-an-hour suit. And one last thing, stay dry. If you are out there in any type of rain or any type of snow or ice, stay dry. It's tough once you get wet. It really speeds up how quickly you lose heat. Even just on your hands, it can become very miserable very quickly. Chest handling fish, chest handling bait, it's tough. Stay as dry as possible. It really helps on a cold day out fishing. Item number 2, deep water. If you look around any of the fishing sites, Facebook groups, online blogs, you're going to hear people talk and bring up fishing in deep water when it's cold. The fish go deep. Folks, for the most part, this is a myth. Now, let me say this. It's not to say that you can't catch catfish in deep water when it's cold. There are times when they may be there. But more often than not, you will catch fish in areas that are not the deepest part of the body of water that you're fishing. Sometimes this is adjacent to the deeper parts along a river channel. Sometimes it may be areas that are up toward the bank where these fish are hanging out. Bait is really the dictator in where the fish are. Fish can tolerate reasonably cold water temperatures, everything short of freezing, and for the most part, you can find these fish pretty much anywhere, any depth during the winter. So don't get locked in on the deep water myth. When you see temperatures rising, if you've had a lot of cold temperatures and all of a sudden you get a spike in daily temperatures for a couple of days, water temperatures start to go up maybe. We get some clear skies, no clouds. Sometimes going shallow then can really produce fish. And when I say shallow, I am talking 2, 3, 4 feet of water. It's not always the fix. It's not always going to work, but don't forget about these areas. Way too often do we just dismiss shallow water in the wintertime. Forget the deep water myth, because you never know where those fish might be hiding. Number 3, some people say nighttime is the right time. That's not true for catfish, especially in the winter. I know people like to fish for catfish at night. I know that's one of the myths that catfish feed more at night. Well, that could be no further than from the truth in the wintertime. Wintertime is one of the worst times for fishing at night for catfish. First of all, it's colder at night. It's just really nasty out there. The other reason is catfish are less active and feeding less at night. Listen, if it's the only time you've got to go fishing, then go fishing, roll the dice, take your chances, hope that you're on feeding fish. But if you're deciding when to go and you're mapping out a plan, maybe you got some time off work, maybe you got a weekend coming up, you're trying to figure out when you want to go, don't go fishing at night unless you absolutely have to. It is one of the worst times to fish for catfish is at night during the winter. Number 4, I may get some arguments on, and that is not putting too much time in one place in the winter. Here's the deal, folks. In the wintertime, cold temperatures, a fish's metabolism slows down. They don't need as much food. They don't need to eat as much, especially when these temperatures start dropping into the 50s and down into the 40s. So, if you are in a place, whether you're being a boat and you're anchored up fishing somewhere, or if you are fishing from the bank, don't spend too much time in one place. I know that's tough for you guys bank fishing, and I understand that. What I would be doing in those situations is varying up where you put baits. Cast baits out there, let them sit 30, 45 minutes, pick them up and move them. If you're in a boat, that's generally what I'm doing in the winter. I almost treat it like an active feeding time in shallow water in warm weather. When I pull into a place, if I'm not getting hit fairly quickly, I'm up and moving, because generally speaking, you're either going to hit them in the head and they're eating, or they're just not active and they're just not there. Now, some people will want to sit and wait forever, and honestly, guys, some of you, especially if you're bank fishing, that may be your only option. But if you have the ability to move, change locations, even if that means varying up where you're casting baits. So you're slinging them way out there in super deep water, try that for a while. Maybe bring them in, cast them straight up and down the bank and see what's working there. Change up where your baits are if you're stuck on the bank, and if you're in a boat, try moving. Another thing, if you're in a boat and you are not anchoring, you are drifting or trolling or dragging or whatever you want to call it when your boat is moving to drag baits through the water, like you see me doing in a lot of my videos, slow down. It's actually the opposite of what I was getting at a minute ago with not waiting too long, you would think, but no. The fish are not very, very active, generally speaking. The slower you can go if you're in a moving boat, the better. Generally speaking, I'm talking anywhere from 0.4 or less. The other day I was fishing, I was dragging around at 0.3. So if you're in a boat and you're moving, slow down. Number 5, another one I'll probably get some pushback and some arguments from, but it's what I call the big bait mistake. And that is using just big baits to try to catch fish. Winter time is definitely a time to downsize your baits. Now, if you watch my videos, when I'm out there fishing, I will have a mix of baits out. I will always keep a couple of big baits out there. And some days, like the other day, I caught a really nice big fish on one of those bigger baits. But generally speaking, most of the fish that I'm catching in wintertime are small baits, maybe the size of your thumb or the end of your thumb size baits. Why is that? I'm not really sure. Some of us have some different ideas on maybe it's the fish's metabolism is slowed down. They don't need as much food. They don't want to use the calories, because the processed food, it takes calories to do that. So when a fish eats something, it takes calories to process those calories to turn it into energy. So maybe it's that, maybe there's something complex to it, but generally speaking, the smaller baits, especially when you start getting into those 40 and 50 degree water temperatures, can help you catch more fish. Now, again, like I've said in other videos, if you're just trying to catch big fish, you don't want to mess with small fish. Chunk some big baits out there and see what happens and roll the dice, and hopefully skunk stays out of the boat. But if you're trying to catch fish, I would suggest downsizing your baits, and I think you'll put more on the hook. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.